Hello everyone. So today's story. Kicked at 17, I bought a $5 farm, but something in the barn changed everything. Before we start, join our YouTube family by subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to like this video and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Now let's get into the story. I was 17 the night my stepfather told me to get out. There wasn't a big fight, no dramatic shouting, no broken plates. Just a long, tired silence at the dinner table, the kind that makes your ears ring. My mom kept her eyes on her plate. He kept his eyes on me. "You're old enough," he finally said. "Figure it out." That was it. He stood up, walked to my room, and came back with my backpack. He didn't pack it carefully. He just stuffed things inside: 2 shirts, a pair of jeans, my old hoodie, and the cracked photo of my real dad I kept hidden in my drawer. The zipper barely closed. He dropped it at my feet. "Don't come back." I waited for my mom to say something. Anything. But she just kept staring at the table like the wood, grain held the secrets of the universe. I walked out before I could change my mind. The air outside felt colder than it should have. It was late September, the kind of night where summer hasn't fully let go but autumn is already whispering threats. I stood on the porch for a second, staring at the house I'd grown up in. Then the porch light snapped off. Message received. I had $5 in my pocket. 5. A crumpled bill that had survived the washing machine twice. I started walking. At 17, you think you're tougher than you are. You think the world owes you something. You think sleeping outside for a night will make you stronger. It doesn't. By morning, my legs hurt, my throat was dry, and reality had settled in like a heavy stone in my chest. I caught a bus heading out of town because it was the only one I could afford. I didn't care where it went. Anywhere was better than standing on that porch waiting for someone who wasn't coming. The bus dropped me off near a small rural town I'd never heard of. 1 gas station, 1 diner, a hardware store that looked like it hadn't updated its sign since the 80s. I slept behind the diner that first night. On the second day, I walked into the hardware store mostly to warm up. The bell above the door jingled, and an old man looked up from behind the counter. "You buying or browsing?" he asked. "Browsing," I muttered. There was a corkboard near the entrance covered in old flyers, lost dogs, babysitting services, a tractor for sale. And then I saw it, a piece of paper, crookedly stapled, barely holding on. "For sale, abandoned farm, cash only, 5, serious inquiries only." I laughed out loud. The old man squinted at me. "You find something funny?" "That farm thing," I said. $5? He didn't smile. "Owner just wants it gone." "Why?" He hesitated. "Bad memories." That was vague enough to mean anything. "Where is it?" I asked. He gave me directions: 5 miles down, a dirt road past a dried-up creek and an old wooden bridge that creaks louder than it should. I should have walked away, but what else did I have? $5, and nowhere to go, so I walked. The dirt road felt endless. My shoes were already thinning at the soles. Dust clung to my jeans. The sky stretched wide and empty above me, pale blue fading toward evening. When I finally saw it, I almost thought I'd taken a wrong turn. The farmhouse leaned slightly to the left like it was tired of standing. The white paint had peeled away in strips, exposing gray wood beneath. Windows were cracked. The front porch sagged in the middle. Off to the right stood a red barn. Its color faded and dull, one door hanging slightly open. The fields around the property were wild with overgrown grass. Weeds pushed through everything. Nature was reclaiming it piece by piece. It looked forgotten, abandoned, lonely. It looked exactly how I felt. A man was waiting near the fence, mid-50s, worn boots, baseball cap pulled low. "You hear about the place?" he asked. "Yeah." He looked me up and down, took in the backpack, the tired eyes. "You got $5? I pulled the bill out slowly. He stared at it for a second like he couldn't believe this was real. "You understand what you're buying?" he asked. "An abandoned farm." He nodded once. "Paperwork's simple. Property's been in my family a long time. No one wants it. Too much history." "What kind of history?" He didn't answer that. Instead, he handed me a folded paper and pointed to a line at the bottom. "Sign." I hesitated only a second before writing my name. 17 years old. Owner of a farm. For $5. He took the bill, tucked it into his pocket, and walked toward his truck. "Good luck," he called without turning around. That was it. No handshake, no explanation. Just dust rising behind his tires as he drove away. I stood there alone. The wind moved through the tall grass with a soft whispering sound. This was mine. Every broken board, every cracked window, every inch of wild field. Mine. I walked up to the house first. The front door stuck halfway before forcing open with a loud groan. Inside smelled like dust and old wood. The furniture was still there. A couch with torn fabric. A small kitchen table, cabinets hanging slightly crooked. It wasn't pretty, but it was shelter. The upstairs had 2 bedrooms. One had a collapsed section of ceiling. The other looked usable if I ignored the cracked mirror and the faint water stains along the wall. I chose that one. I dropped my backpack on the floor and sat down. Silence, no yelling, no footsteps, no porch lights turning off, just quiet. For the first time in days, my chest loosened a little. As the sun dipped lower, shadows stretched across the fields. The barn stood dark against the fading sky. I should have been excited. I owned something, but instead I felt small. Because owning something doesn't automatically mean you know how to fix it. And I had no idea what I was doing. Still, I wasn't going back. Not ever. That night, I found a dusty blanket in a hallway closet and spread it on the bedroom floor. The mattress on the bed frame looked questionable at best, so the floor felt safer. I lay on my back staring at the ceiling. Wind brushed against the house. Wood creaked. It was normal. Old houses make noises. At least that's what I told myself. Around midnight, I heard something different. Not the wind. Not the house settling. A distant metallic clang. I sat up slowly. The sound came again, from outside, from the direction of the barn. My heart thudded hard enough that I felt it in my throat. It was probably nothing. Loose metal shifting. Animals. Rats. This was a farm after all. I lay back down and forced my eyes closed. Silence. Then, a slow dragging sound. Like something being pulled across the wooden floor. I held my breath. The barn was about 50 yards from the house. Far enough that sounds shouldn't be clear, but this one was deliberate. I sat up again. The window in my room faced the barn. I crawled toward it carefully and peeked through the dusty glass. At first I saw nothing but darkness. Then, a faint glow, just for a second, like a flicker. Then it disappeared. My stomach dropped. There was no electricity on the property. The owner had said the power lines were disconnected years ago. So what was that? Another clang echoed across the field. Not loud, but intentional. Someone was in that barn. I swallowed hard. I didn't have much worth stealing. Actually, I had nothing worth stealing, unless someone didn't know that. I scanned the room for something to defend myself with. There was an old baseball bat leaning against the closet wall. The wood was chipped, but it felt solid in my hands. I stood there for a long minute debating. Stay inside, lock the door, pretend you didn't hear anything, or go out there and face whatever or whoever was inside. This was my property now. $5. All I had left in the world. If someone thought they could just walk in and take it, they were wrong. My legs felt weak, but I forced them to move. Down the stairs, through the front door. The night air hit my face sharp and cold. The barn stood in silhouette under the moonlight. The slightly open door swayed gently. Creak. Pause. Creak. I gripped the bat tighter and started walking. Each step felt louder than it should have. The grass brushed against my jeans. Crickets chirped somewhere in the distance. Halfway there, I saw it again. A faint flicker of light through a crack in the barn wall. Not lightning. Not reflection. A real light. Someone was definitely inside. I stopped a few feet from the door. My heart pounded so hard I was sure whoever was inside could hear it. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. The wind shifted. The door moved slightly, revealing a sliver of darkness beyond. I stepped closer. The smell of hay and damp wood reached me. I pushed the door open slowly. It groaned loudly in protest. Inside, shadows stretched long across the wooden floor. And near the center, a small lantern sat on top of a crate. The flame flickered softly. My throat went dry. "Who's there?" I asked, voice steadier than I felt. Something moved in the far corner. Not fast, not aggressive, just a shift. I tightened my grip on the bat. "Come out," I said. Silence. Then, a soft voice. "Don't." I froze. It wasn't deep. It wasn't threatening. It sounded scared. "Please," the voice whispered. "Don't call anyone." I blinked. "What?" A figure slowly stepped out from behind a stack of old hay bales. A girl, about my age, wrapped in an old blanket, her hair messy, her face pale in the lantern light. She looked just as shocked to see me as I was to see her. "This is my farm," I said automatically, even though the words felt strange. She swallowed. I didn't know someone bought it. I did. She looked toward the door like she might run. Wait, I said quickly. I'm not calling anyone. She hesitated. The lantern flame flickered between us. You live here? I asked. She shook her head slightly. Just staying. For how long? A few weeks. A few weeks. So the noises, the lights, the bad memories. People probably thought the place was haunted. It wasn't. It was her. I lowered the bat slowly. I'm not going to hurt you, I said. She studied me carefully. You're not from around here, she said. No. Me neither. We stood there in silence for a moment. Two strangers. Two kids with nowhere else to go. The barn creaked again as the wind brushed against it. Finally she spoke. Are you going to make me leave? I looked around at the empty farm, the broken house, the endless field. $5 had bought me land, but it hadn't bought me certainty, or company, or a plan. I met her eyes, and for the first time since I'd been kicked out, I didn't feel completely alone. I don't know, I admitted. The lantern flame flickered again, casting long shadows across the barn walls, and something told me this farm wasn't as empty as I thought. The barn felt smaller once the shock wore off. Not physically smaller, but heavier, like the air had thickened around us. The lantern between us flickered softly, throwing moving shadows across the wooden beams above. Dust floated in the light like tiny drifting stars. She kept the blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders. I kept holding the bat, though not as tightly now. Neither of us trusted the other. Not fully. What's your name? I asked. She hesitated. Lila. I nodded. I know, she interrupted quietly. That made my stomach tighten. You know? You signed the property paper outside. I saw from the loft window. There was a loft. She must have seen my confusion. There's a ladder back there, she said, pointing toward the shadows. You can see the whole yard from up there. So she had been watching when I bought the place. Watching me. The thought was unsettling, but also strangely understandable. If you were hiding somewhere, you'd watch too. How long have you been here? I asked again. She looked at the lantern flame like the answer was inside it. 3 weeks, she said. Maybe 4. Alone? She nodded. The barn creaked softly. I lowered the bat completely and leaned it against a post. You don't have family? She let out a humorless laugh. Not the kind that notices when you're gone. I didn't press further. I understood that answer better than I wanted to. Why here? I asked. Because no one comes here, she said simply. People think it's cursed. I almost smiled. Cursed? That's what they say. Lights in the barn at night, sounds, doors moving. The old owner's family. Something happened years ago. What happened? She shook her head. Different stories. Every time fire, disappearance, death, depends who you ask. Great. So I'd bought a cursed farm for $5. Perfect. I exhaled slowly and ran a hand through my hair. Look, I said, I just got kicked out 3 days ago. This is all I've got. I don't even know how to fix a door properly. Her eyes softened just a little. You're 17, she said. Yeah. Me too. That hung in the air between us. Two 17-year-olds standing in a supposedly cursed barn, pretending we knew what we were doing. What were you planning? I asked her. Just staying here forever? She shrugged. Until winter. Winter? I figured I'd deal with that when it comes. That wasn't a plan. That was survival mode. I recognized it, the kind where you don't think too far ahead, because thinking too far ahead hurts. The wind picked up outside, rattling one of the loose metal sheets on the roof. She flinched slightly at the sound. You scared? I asked. No, she said quickly. Then softer, maybe a little. I nodded. Me too. Silence again. Finally, I said the thing I hadn't planned to say. You can stay. Her head snapped up. What? You were here first, I said. And I'm not exactly in a position to judge anyone. She stared at me like she was waiting for the catch. What's the condition? She asked carefully. Condition? There's always one. I thought about it. About the broken house. The fields. The leaning fence. Help me fix it, I said. She blinked. Fix it? Yeah, the farm. The house. Whatever we can. If we're both here, might as well make it livable. She studied my face for signs of a joke. I wasn't joking. After a long pause, she nodded slowly. Okay. That one word changed everything. Because suddenly this wasn't just a hiding spot, it was something else. A beginning. We moved the lantern closer to the center of the barn and sat on overturned crates. She told me she'd found an old well pump that still worked if you primed it long enough. There was a small shed with tools, mostly rusted but usable. She'd been collecting canned food from a backpack she'd brought and rationing it carefully. You didn't think to check the house, I asked. I did, she said. But I didn't want to risk anyone seeing smoke or lights. Smart. We made a rough plan right there in the barn. Tomorrow we'd check the well properly, clean one room in the house completely, board up the broken windows before it got colder. Practical things, real things. For the first time since I'd been kicked out, my thoughts weren't spinning in panic. They were focused. What about school? I asked suddenly. She stiffened. What about it? We can't just disappear. She looked away. I already did. That answer hurt more than I expected. I didn't push it further. Instead, I stood up and looked around the barn properly for the first time. There were old farming tools hanging on the walls. A tractor in the far corner, half covered with a tarp. Stacks of hay bales, dusty but dry. This place wasn't dead. It was sleeping, and maybe, just maybe, it could wake up. You hungry? I asked. She hesitated, then nodded once. We walked back to the house together. It felt less scary with 2 sets of footsteps in the grass. Inside, the darkness felt different now, less empty. We found a few old candles in the kitchen drawer and lit them carefully. The soft glow filled the room with warm light. She moved cautiously, like she expected someone to jump out at any second. I realized she'd been alone in that barn every night for weeks. That kind of silence changes a person. We sat at the small kitchen table with one of her canned soups, heated over a tiny camping stove she'd hidden in the barn. It wasn't much, but it was warm. You really bought this place for $5? She asked between bites. Yeah. She shook her head slightly. That's insane. Probably. But kind of brave. I hadn't thought of it that way. It hadn't felt brave. It had felt desperate. After we ate, we explored the house together more thoroughly. The downstairs living room had potential if the floorboards were reinforced. The kitchen sink pipes would need work. The staircase creaked loudly but held our weight. Upstairs, I showed her the bedroom I'd claimed. You can take the other one, I said. The ceiling's collapsed. We'll fix it. She raised an eyebrow. You know how? No, I admitted. But we'll figure it out. She gave the smallest hint of a smile. That was the first time I saw it. It changed her whole face. That night, we didn't sleep much. Every sound felt amplified now that we were aware of each other. Around 2 a.m., I heard her footsteps in the hallway. You okay? I whispered from my doorway. Yeah, she whispered back. Just checking. Checking what? That it's real. I understood that too. The next morning, sunlight poured through the cracked windows, illuminating layers of dust we hadn't noticed before. It looked less haunted in daylight, just old. We started with the well. It took nearly 20 minutes of pumping before water sputtered out. Brown at first, then clearer. We both laughed when it finally flowed properly. It felt like winning something. Small victories. We cleaned the kitchen first, swept out years of dirt, wiped down cabinets, opened windows to let fresh air in. By noon, we were covered in dust and sweat, but the room looked alive. This might actually work, she said softly. I nodded. It has to. As the day went on, we talked more. Not about the worst parts of our pasts. Not yet. Just small things. Favorite music. Movies we'd seen. Things we used to want to be when we were kids. Architect, she said at one point. Really? I liked building things. I looked around at the broken walls. Good, I said. You're hired. She laughed, and the sound didn't belong in a cursed place. By late afternoon, we decided to check the tractor in the barn. It looked ancient but sturdy. Think it runs? She asked. Only one way to find out. We lifted the tarp. The metal beneath was dusty but intact. I climbed into the seat and turned the key. Nothing. Dead battery, I muttered. She hopped down and checked under the hood. Battery's corroded, she said. But the engine might still be fine. How do you know that? My uncle used to fix cars. There was something in her voice when she said that, a mix of pride and pain. We worked on it for nearly an hour before giving up for the day. As the sun dipped lower, the fields glowed golden. Standing there beside the barn, I realized something strange. This place didn't feel cursed. It felt waiting, like it had been holding its breath. That evening, as we sat on the porch steps watching the sky turn pink and orange, she asked quietly, "Why did he kick you out?" I swallowed. Because I wasn't what he wanted. She nodded slowly. Same. We didn't need more explanation than that. Darkness settled again. But this time, when the barn creaked in the distance, it didn't sound threatening. It sounded like part of the farm's language. And for the first time in a long time, when I lay down on the floor to sleep, I didn't feel like I was falling. I felt like I was standing on something solid. Not because the house was fixed, not because the future was certain, but because I wasn't alone in it anymore. Still, as I drifted towards sleep, one thought lingered quietly in the back of my mind. If she had been hiding here for weeks, then why did the old owner look nervous when he sold it to me? And why did he say good luck like a warning? The next morning I woke up before the sun. For a second I didn't remember where I was. Then I heard the wind brushing across the fields, the soft ticking of cooling wood in the walls, and the faint clatter of dishes downstairs. Leela was already awake. I sat up on the blanket, rubbing sleep from my eyes. The house felt different again, not fixed, not safe exactly, but alive. Like it recognized movement now, like it approved. I went downstairs. She was standing by the sink, pumping water into a metal pot. "You're up early," I said. She glanced over her shoulder. "Couldn't sleep." "Nightmares?" She hesitated. "Something like that." I didn't ask more. Instead, I stepped onto the porch and looked toward the barn. In daylight, it looked harmless. Just old wood and faded red paint. No glow, no shadows. But something about it tugged at my thoughts. "You ever explore the whole thing?" I asked when she joined me outside. "The barn?" "Yeah." "All of it," she said. "Except the far storage room." "Why not?" She shifted uncomfortably. "The door's stuck. And it smells weird." "Weird how?" "Metal, damp, old." That didn't sound great, but it also didn't sound supernatural. "Let's check it today," I said. She looked at me carefully. "You sure?" I nodded. "If we're going to live here, we need to know everything about it." She didn't argue. After a quick breakfast, canned beans and the last of her crackers, we headed toward the barn together. The grass was damp with morning dew. Our shoes left dark trails behind us. Inside, sunlight filtered through cracks in the walls, forming bright stripes across the floor. The lantern from last night sat cold on the crate. I felt a small, strange comfort seeing it there, proof that what happened wasn't some dream. We walked toward the back of the barn, past the tractor, past the stacked hay, toward a heavy wooden door half hidden behind hanging tools. "This one," she said quietly. Up close I could see what she meant. The hinges were rusted thick, the wood darker than the rest of the barn, almost swollen. I grabbed the handle and pulled. It didn't move. "Help me," I said. We both leaned our weight against it. The wood groaned but held. "On three," I said. 1, 2, 3. We shoved hard. With a loud crack, the door finally gave way, swinging inward and stirring up a cloud of dust. The smell hit immediately. Old metal, damp earth, and something else. Not rotten, just forgotten. The room inside was smaller than I expected. No windows, just a narrow vent near the ceiling. There were shelves along one wall stacked with old boxes. A wooden workbench sat in the center, and on that bench, stacks of papers, neatly arranged. I stepped closer. They weren't random. They were documents, ledgers, maps of the property, photos. Lila moved beside me, picking one up carefully. "These are old," she murmured. I flipped open one of the ledgers. Dates from 15 years ago. Crop yields, financial numbers, and then a sudden stop. Pages torn out. Several of them, right near the end. "Why would someone remove pages?" she asked. "Because they didn't want something read," I said. She swallowed. On the shelf above the bench I noticed a small metal box. "Locked. Find anything like a key when you were here?" I asked. She shook her head. I picked up the box and shook it gently. Something rattled inside. Not empty, not solid either. "We'll need tools to open it," I said. She looked uneasy. "Maybe we shouldn't." "Why?" "Because what if this is what people were talking about? Paperwork?" "You know what I mean." I did. The rumors, the bad memories, the owner's strange tone. I looked around the room again. Nothing about it felt dangerous, just secretive. "I don't believe in curses," I said firmly. She crossed her arms. "You believe in coincidences?" I paused. "Not really." She stepped closer to the workbench and picked up one of the photographs. I leaned in beside her. The photo showed the farmhouse, but not broken. Fresh paint, clean windows, fields neatly planted. And in front of it stood a family, a man, a woman, and a boy about 10 years old. They looked happy. The boy held something in his hands, a small wooden sign. Zooming closer, I could make out the words. Green Hollow Farm. That was the name, so this place had one. Flip it, Lila said. I turned the photo over. On the back, written in faded ink. Summer before everything changed. A chill crept up my spine. Everything changed how? She whispered. I didn't have an answer. We spent the next hour carefully going through the boxes. More financial records, letters, newspaper clippings. One clipping caught my attention. Local farm declares bankruptcy after mysterious fire. The date matched the last year written in the ledger. I read quickly. A small fire in the barn storage area. Contained before it spread. No injuries reported, but heavy financial loss. Storage area, Lila said quietly, looking around the room we were standing in. This room, I realized. So this was where the fire happened. But I saw no burn marks, no obvious damage. Maybe they repaired it, she suggested. Maybe. But something still didn't fit. Why tear pages from the ledger? Why sell the whole property for $5? Why act nervous? My eyes drifted back to the metal lockbox. We need to open that, I said. Lila looked torn, then finally nodded. Okay. We carried it back to the main part of the barn where the tools were better. I found a rusted hammer and a flathead screwdriver. Stand back, I told her. It took several hard hits. The metal dented, then bent. Finally, the lock snapped. The lid popped open. Inside, more papers. But these were different. Personal, insurance documents, claim forms, and one envelope labeled private. My heart pounded as I opened it. Inside was a letter, addressed to the owner, the man who sold me the farm. I read aloud. If you are reading this, it means I couldn't fix what I broke. The fire was not an accident. I was trying to hide the debt. I thought I could burn the records and claim insurance. But it spread faster than I expected. I never meant for the barn to catch fully. If anyone finds this, they deserve to know the truth. Green Hollow didn't fail because of bad luck. It failed because of me. Signed, the man from the photograph, the father. We both stood there in stunned silence. So it wasn't cursed, Lila said slowly. No, I replied. It was guilt. The torn pages from the ledger. The fire. The bankruptcy. The shame. That's why the owner wanted it gone. It wasn't haunted. It was a reminder. Lila let out a long breath. So all those stories? Just stories. Relief washed over her face. Over mine too. We weren't living in a cursed farm. We were living in someone else's unfinished chapter, and now it was ours. That evening we sat on the porch again, but everything felt lighter. The barn wasn't mysterious anymore. It was just old wood and secrets we now understood. I think we can really fix this place, she said quietly. I nodded. Green Hollow Farm, I repeated. She smiled slightly. We should put the sign back up, after we earn it. She looked at me curiously. What does that mean? It means we make it ours first. The wind moved gently across the fields. The sun dipped low. For the first time, I didn't feel like a kid who'd been kicked out. I felt like someone standing at the beginning of something real. Two 17-year-olds. $5. A farm with a past. But no curse. Just work to do. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited for tomorrow.